Secret friends, unite!
Welcome to the Secret Friends podcast. This is episode 441. This is your guide to the geek side, and we are ready to get our nerd on. It's the end of the summer. We're not talking about weather, but we are going to be talking about all the awesome things in the world of nerd. We've got a great guest, but before we go on, I am Todd Oxtra, one of your hosts, joined by Charlie Carden.
Oh, I'm going to talk about weather. We had a tornado watch here in Michigan. Was down here in this basement a couple of days ago because of the sirens going, woo! Stuff was flying all over the place. We were untouched, but other parts around here were devastated. Roofs destroyed all across Michigan. Yeah, it was nuts. So we're very lucky. So my heart goes out to all those people affected. Hopefully their lives are getting back to normal. Yowza!
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but, you know, we're getting up into the fall, which means spooky times. Pumpkin spice lattes have dropped at Starbucks, so we're in the mood, and I'm so glad to be joined this week by a returning guest. That is Mr. Matt Sowinski from Carpool Gaming. Matt, how are you doing?
What's up, Todd? It's awesome to be back. I'm also going to talk about the weather. I'm pretty sure we got hit by that same storm that was rolling through.
Kept moving east.
Yeah, CN Tower, there was a TikTok. You could actually see that thing swaying in the wind a little bit. It
oh my God,
nothing major happened, but my God, that was not something that I wanted to see. But yeah, awesome to be back. Super stoked to be here. Thanks for having me back, guys. This is great.
You got it.
Very good. Well, with that, Matt, thank you for joining us. We talked about anime. I believe that was what was the main topic of the show, but this one's going to be all about Ahsoka and the world of Star Wars, not Star Trek. We'll talk a little about Star Trek.
We are going to talk a little bit about Star Trek, though.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'll jump in. We are on approximately day 126 of the writer's strike and day 56 of the SAG-AFTRA actor strike. We have always been in their corner and will continue to be. We were very fortunate that we were able to make a small donation to the Entertainment Community Fund at entertainmentcommunity.org. If you're able to pitch in, these people are fighting for their livelihood, just trying to make sure that they can make ends meet, roof over their head, etc. Not everybody's Tom Cruise. Some people are just out there working a day-to-day, week-to-week kind of acting gig, and they are fighting for their lives. So please, if you can give and help out, that would be absolutely amazing. And as course, segueing, and we always like to give some love, honor, and respect to our Patreons, or as I like to misspell it, Padarons, over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. These are the wonderful folks that give us the ability to make great extra content for us. If you visit that website, you can do a free 1-week trial at any of our commitment levels. Check out our content, and if you like it, please stick around. But these are the folks that make it happen. At the Best Buds level, we're talking about Jamie Prinky, and our BFFs are Sean, Stella, and Henry Nias, the Nias family, my dear friend Missy Merchant, and their great friend Andy Milliken. We are very grateful for all of you. Thank you very much. So,
yes.
Moving on to the go ahead, please.
Oh, yes. Yes. Thank you for our patrons that make everything possible. We've got new shows dropping all the time. Charlie just did an episode of basically this Facts of Geek Life, all about Buffy. Don't know it changed his mindset on Buffy. It's a different type of show, but you have to find out.
With that show in particular, I like to bring on a guest, and I say, pick a show, pick a season of that show. Often we start from the beginning. I said, give me 4 episodes that you thought were great, and then we watch it, and I let them take the lead. It's fun. But yeah, Buffy is kind of an out there one for me. I also just recorded with Jonathan Snedeker, who's one of our regular contributors, the first season or the first segment of Batman 66 season 1. That's going to be a fun one. So look for that in a couple of weeks. But yeah, Patreon.com Secret Friends Unite. Find out what all the fuss is about.
Absolutely. So with that, Charlie, we've got this covered with a cover from a very special edition of Marvel Super Special number 41, the adaptation of Howard the Duck, the film. It was Lucasfilm's, it was Marvel's first movie done by Lucasfilm about Howard the Duck.
And it's a spectacular. It was filmed largely in Cleveland. That's just a little factoid I remember. Your human stars were Leia Thompson, I think Tim Robbins, and was it the guy who was am I remembering the guy who was
principal
the principal
from Ferris Bueller's Day Off was Jeffrey something or other, who was
Jeffrey Jones, who's no longer exists in pop culture.
I think he's in jail for child
that would
pornography.
yeah, that's pretty much the reason. But again, it's interesting when you put together Lucasfilm and Marvel. They are now all under the same house. So one could argue, and of course, with the multiverse being something, that this was the first MCU film. Some people like to quip that. I don't know that I necessarily give that theory credence, but after, Doctor Strange and the, God, was it Multiverse of Madness? Now I'm forgetting the name of that movie. Everything is canon. So, what can you say is not canon? You know what I mean? But this was a crazy offbeat film. Todd, I was 10, you were 11 when this movie came out. Had anatomically correct duck costumes, including a topless female duck in a bathtub as Howard is being pulled onto our Earth or whatever.
George Lucas said that has to be in it, or I'm not making this film. Yeah,
he said this is where I take my stand artistically. Is basically duck boobs. That's the hill I'm going to die on. Duck boobs.
Yes,
it's very
weird. Matt, have you seen Howard the Duck?
I have not. I'm familiar with it. Like, I've seen screens from it online, but I've never had the pleasure of watching it myself. But anytime duck boobs are brought up, it jumps to the top of my watch list. So I think I was planning on watching Across the Spider-Verse again tonight. I might shelf that and go for a good old plate of duck boobs with Howard the Duck.
Just to quote Patton Oswalt, "Stop drilling, you've struck oil." Duck boobs.
But the funny thing about this comic, the series, it was actually a magazine format Marvel did. And they did it, and it was called Marvel Comics Super Special, but it was basically to cover things that they didn't do in comics. So they did like an adaptation of Labyrinth, Santa Claus the movie. They did Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, Muppets Take Manhattan, The Last Starfighter. I mean, Charlie, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was one of these.
That's right. It was, like you said, it was a magazine format, spine bound. So, it was like you put it on your bookshelf.
It's
kind of
very
deal,
weird.
As I recall.
It's
weird.
Very weird. There was even some James Bond ones in here, Blade Runner, Annie, Dark Crystal. It makes no sense, but Howard the Duck essentially killed the series because it's the last one. So, folks, if you find this, so Matt, you really should, when you were at Fan Expo, you should have looked for this because it's obviously worth billions.
I do own the DVD, and I would not be surprised if you go to, justwatch.tv that it might be somewhere. But I'm very proud to have the disc. So, without a doubt, I'm so proud that I do not need to see it again. It's forever etched in to my brain with a big burn. Speaking of things that are etched in and the big burn, waiting down for us at the corner of Hollywood and Vine, our senior news correspondent, 123 years young. I'm talking about Madam Webb. She always has the biggest scoops, news, and reviews. So let's go.
Now it's time for Madam Webb's rumors and news. Take it away, boys.
Thank you, Madam Webb. And Madam Webb, I just want to let you know, I have a new prize possession.
Oh, my goodness!
Whoa! Yes. Oh, my goodness.
We talked about that several months ago, and I told you if that went on clearance at Target, you were supposed to tell me. Is that where you got it?
Clearance at Target. It was, I bid correctly on eBay, and I got the Madam Webb Funko Pop exclusive at Target, which, Matt, sorry about Target's demise in Canada.
Oh, that's right. You guys, but you guys do have Toys R Us. I do know that for a fact, and we do not.
Very few. They've gone the way of the dinosaur very much, but there's a couple still out here.
That's it. That is exciting. Well, Todd, I want one, and you know that Christmas is coming. So wink, wink, wink. I would like to have her right in the studio with Cobra Commander, the clone, my Batman, and all the other stuff you see back there.
She's an actual bobblehead too, so she's a deluxe Funko
She could sit. If you're following my hand, she could sit directly on top of Cap's shield, which is propped against the wall. I think that would be perfect. That's just my take.
Yeah, it's going to be worth billions when the Madam Web movies comes out. Just watch it.
Oh, you better believe, especially with Sydney Sweeney in the title role. Mm-hmm. But I digress. So delays and dismays. We're getting our first victims, Todd, of the very justified delays of the writers and the actors strike. Is that something that we talked about just last week, where Todd was like, this is my movie of the fall, I'm super fired up. Now you're not going to be seeing Dune 2 to 2024. And you know what? I mean, I was getting excited about this too, but like I said, I may be sad for the event, but I am happy for the reason. You know what I'm saying? So, so yeah, we've got that getting pushed to next March. So 4-month delay, which in the greater scheme of things doesn't really matter. Let's hope the strike is over by then, because oh my goodness. Let's see here. We're also seeing Godzilla X Kong, the new empire. Weren't we also talking about that last week?
Well, we were talking about the new Godzilla series, which is going to be on Apple TV+.
Oh,
So
there
it's
we
like,
go.
this thing's getting a little crazy. The Godzilla universe, the monster universe it's everywhere.
Right. It couldn't all be one and the same. So let's see. An animated Lord of the Rings spinoff also being pushed a whole year out there.
I
Yeah.
don't even remember that
No.
thing being announced, an animated
Right.
Lord of the Rings film. That's okay. I think the Embracer Group owns the Lord of the Rings now in non-WB stuff. And Charlie, Embracer Group is this odd like corporation that has bought like literally everything under the sun. They've embraced like everything.
That the way you describe it, I'm like, is it really a front for Cobra or something? It sounds
Probably
very evil.
is.
You're not far off. Like they've done a ton of video game acquisitions.
This guy right here.
to the nth degree. And like there was like a memo that went out that I think got leaked that they were basically like some of the higher ups there were like, basically what it boiled down to was we're not milking Lord of the Rings enough.
More milk.
There needs to be much more milk coming out of this franchise globally all the time. So they're going
more
to
milk.
More
we
milk.
ran out of nipples.
Yes, you can milk anything with nipples, Greg. Oh my God. All right. Well, looking back at Warner Brothers, they have surprisingly not touched other things in their schedule, which would include Wonka for December 15th and I'm not excited about it, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom for December 20, and The Color Purple, which I'm really actually very excited about. And again, we talked about these last week on our fall movie preview, which has now been pared down by about 25% of things that we were actually excited about. So what do you think? I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. If I was them, I would be like, they have a term in on the stage, which I've done some STEM in entertainment in my time, making this motion, stretch it out, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's what they're doing. They're trying to stretch it out, just like we're now seeing, and I think we'll touch on later, you're seeing a lot of streaming programming that's on its way over to traditional terrestrial television, because they got to do something, because they're just going to keep losing money. And again, they act so arrogant, like, oh, we'll just sweat them out. They're going to be sweating your ass out. You know what I mean? Because nobody's making any money if they're not producing content that people want to pay to see.
Yeah, and they'll start losing subscribers because if there's not new content coming out, and guess what hurts them a lot? Not getting a stream of revenue that they've based their whole new model on.
Wait. A stream of revenue for streaming content? Meh.
I see you're picking up what I'm putting down there, Charlie. But Matt, I wanted to ask you specifically because I'm a little unclear about Canadian productions, because is Canada and their production houses, are they treated differently? Or if the actors are doing Canadian productions, is that different? I know in the UK it's different because they have UK productions, different organizations. So you can see actors who are doing things in the UK pimp those, and they like Martin Freeman has a new series coming out that's a UK thing, and he can do it. So are you aware of anything unique about Canada or Canadian productions because you have BBC or CBC and those type of things?
I wish I could tell you, Todd, honestly, because I don't know anybody that watches any Canadian television. Even
though all of our shows get made in Vancouver or Toronto.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everything gets made up here. Like, I mean, the Boys films out of Toronto, right? Like, the only one that I could think of in recent memory that had any kind of headway was Kim's Convenience, which met its untimely end a few years ago. But like I would imagine that we'd probably operate under the similar rules as UK. Anything that's Canada made within Canada is probably fair game. But the problem is that nobody watches that anyway. You won't like nobody engages with it. I cannot tell you a single popular Canadian made, Canadian built television show right now.
Was Letterkenny, was that made?
Letterkenny was the very only one I could think of.
Well, Trailer Park Boys and then Schitt's Creek are the ones that kind of come to my mind, right?
Well, Schitt's Creek is long gone, but Letterkenny's still on. Yeah,
Schitt's Creek incredible, but again, like that's been over for a few years now. So like I'd imagine that it's similar rules as the UK, but I'd be hard pressed to tell you of a good Canadian show to kind of fall back on if you're looking for something that's not made in the States, because like mentioned, everything gets made here anyway, and that goes to the States.
Yeah, U.S. produced kind of gets gobbled up. So now, do you guys have? I know over in Australia they have Stan and they have Crave. Don't you guys have Crave there in Canada? Is that another?
We do.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha. So
we don't have HBO Max. We don't have Hulu. So a lot of that stuff either ends up on Netflix or your Amazon Prime, or it goes to Crave, which everything HBO goes to Crave.
that's kind of gobbled, just got something different. So very interesting. Well, we will see. Again, it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. We absolutely stand with the WGA and SAG-AFTRA in their efforts to be able to make a living. Let's hope.
Did you hear the latest though on it? That the TMP, they are, rather than being reasonable, coming to the table with better offers, they actually are hiring a PR firm to restate their arguments.
Crisis management firm. It's like, just give it up, guys. How is restating their position gonna really change anything? They still have to make a deal. So
listen, I think that what gets lost in all of this is nobody thinks of the billionaires running these companies. Okay, can you think of all the money that they're losing? Nobody considers these.
Oh my God, I'm gonna have to go from 5 Gulfstream jets down to 3.5, or maybe I'll have to buy a smaller boat next year, and I'll have to, God
forbid, buy one that's electric.
Oh my God, I'll have to get my mistress a Honda instead of a Lexus.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
and the funny part is, like, when they're blaming things, like they just canceled A League of Their Own, the series, and they blame the strike, and I'm like, which you caused.
Yeah, we don't like to talk about that.
No.
Oh my God, reminds me of a certain politician we all hate. But anyway, moving right along. So Todd, you finally got me to watch this trailer. You've been talking about this for a long time. You know how much I love Zack Snyder, but his Star Wars movie that's not a Star Wars movie is coming to Netflix at just before Christmas. Just watched a trailer upstairs. April and I watched it together, and Todd's note said they left in the lightsabers, and April was like, "Those aren't lightsabers; those are swords that are glowing." I'm like, "You got that?" Oh, but yeah, this is going to be a 2-part deal, but we get the first part, as I said, on December 22, with the second part following up on in April. This is starring Sofia Boutella, who was in Atomic Blonde, but was also the one cool new character in Star Trek Beyond back in 2016.
And she was in The Mummy. The start and end of the Monster Dark Universe.
We don't really need to talk about that. So she is the protagonist. Your antagonist is Ed Skrein from Deadpool, and he was also in the much failed Indiana Jones movie this summer. He's one of the Nazi flunkies. Let's see here. So this was Todd, jog my memory. This was Zack Snyder's attempted sale maybe a decade ago to George Lucas, like, I got this great idea for a Star Wars movie.
Correct.
And he was like, not happening. And so he said, I'm taking it back then. I'm taking it back then. And then we get this, and very, very Star Wars influence. Looking at this, like a 2.5-minute trailer. And it says, once meant to be a Star Wars film retrofitted from a long gestating concept. And so and just look for the 8-hour mega director's cut sometime in 2025. But I think it looks very exciting. Very Snydery, a lot of slow-mo, a lot of weird light angles. Anthony Hopkins, I'm like, it was the first voice you heard with Anthony Hopkins. I'm like, ooh, man, this guy does love to get paid, doesn't he?
And he's going to be a favorite in this, so he didn't have to actually show up other than just voice his lines.
Right.
So
we get. Yeah, who else we got? Ray Fisher, Jimon Hansu from Guardians of the Galaxy, Shazam. Let's see who else. Yeah, I said Ray Fisher and Anthony Hopkins and Charlie Hunnam from Pacific Rim. Yeah, there you go.
And what, 50 Shades of Grey, was he in that one?
No.
He was originally supposed to be in that, and then he
was in that one of the biker shows. Was it Mayans or Sons of Anarchy? He was in one of those, wasn't he?
And he was in that really not good Excalibur type movie, directed by Guy Ritchie.
Oh, gotcha.
King Arthur. The King Arthur.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, obviously the other Netflix project that's relevant to this in the next Spider-Verse was the zombie Vegas thing. It was further up here, and I already lost the name of it.
Army of the Dead.
Army of the Dead. There you go. Hey, Tig Notaro was in that. I thought that made it worth watching.
He
Who was the
also
star?
did
Wasn't
Sucker
it?
Punch. Yep.
Yeah, there you go. Who was the star of the Army of the Dead? Wasn't that Batista?
Dave Batista.
There we go. Yeah, see, I like him. So that was fun. It was dumb. It was your classic dumb fun with a zombie tiger and all this zombie casino and stuff. So I don't know. I mean, this is definitely great. Christmas break for those of us who get a Christmas break. It's not for the kids. I'm thinking this looks a little choppy and blow uppy. Plus, it's not rated yet, so you don't actually know if it's for the kids. But
I don't think Netflix rates things, do they?
No. Well, when the last title card came up, it said this film has not yet been rated. So unless that was a unnecessary tease, which it could have been, I assume that it'll get a rating at some point. But yeah, I'm interested in watching this. I'll definitely give this a crack. It's probably 3 hours long, and then the second part of it is like 7 hours long. And I'm sure not 1 second will be wasted by lens flare and terrible dialogue. So yeah, there we go.
So the interesting part about this, Zack Snyder says he was influenced by Heavy Metal, the magazine, if you remember that. It's basically a lot of big guns, boobs, and sexy ladies, and that type of stuff with fantasy and sci-fi elements. That's exactly what Heavy Metal has always been. It's unapologetic. And this was apparently Lucas asked Snyder to come forward and pitch an idea for Star Wars back in the day prior to the Disney. So it didn't work out, but Snyder says, well, I'm still going to make a Star Wars film, but this one's going to be all about the sex, drug, and rock and roll. He wanted to make Star Wars that was unapologetically like adult in not necessarily mature, but adult in like, I can use drugs and have, sex.
I got it. This is Star Wars a la Hunter S. Thompson, right? Or like Leaving Las Vegas. It's just like crazy. Now, I've never seen Heavy Metal had an animated film back in like 1980, 1981. I've never seen
two movies. There was
they had two, but it was one of those that as a kid, if you even got whispers of it, like, oh, Starlog magazine or something, I'm like, because in 81 I was 5, and 5, 6, 7, that early 80s, I'd be like, ooh, animated boobs. Still never saw it. So I guess it's my Great White Buffalo. I guess I better track it down.
It's gonna have to be a watch with you in April, Charlie. I think that's your next.
Oh my goodness.
Movie. So Matt, with this, obviously you're a Star Wars fan. Seeing this, don't know your history with Zack Snyder. Did this excite you?
I'm whelmed, honestly. I'm not a big Zack Snyder guy. I have been like anything that he's touched, I haven't usually been a big fan of. And everything that this, like the way that it's been described on the internet as, Star Wars, but sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It just seems like so edgy for the sake of being so yeah, exactly. Like the trailer looks interesting enough. I'll probably give it a watch. Are my expectations up for this? Absolutely not. Like he already went on to say that like there is going to be a director's cut of this movie next year that's genuinely 5 hours long.
Exactly. Of just part one?
No,
of just
Zach,
part
you can't
one.
Put this in. Zach, you can't do this. Well, Zach,
nobody tells me what to do.
Just part one. So like,
my God,
So I'm curious. Like I said, it looks fun enough. But like it'll be probably one of those things where it's just like, if I'm bored, I'm not doing anything else, and I've had a couple drinks, maybe I'll toss it on. But I don't really see myself, running to Netflix to watch this the second it comes out.
That is the burning lead of entertainment. Is if I've had enough alcohol, maybe this will be of appeal.
Exactly.
You know what? That's how they're going to make their money. And you know what? God bless America. That's okay. Oh my goodness. Any final thoughts, Todd, before we move along to this next questionable item that you posted?
I am really curious. I have not liked any original Zack Snyder things. I didn't like Army of the Dead. Didn't like the movie with the girl, Sucker Punch. We'll see. Horrible. Once again, this is all him. He has nobody to complain about if it doesn't resonate with an audience. It's all his. It's his vision.
It'll be like blaming. It'll be like blaming the stuff getting canceled on the strike. But anyway, something that didn't get canceled, and I'm kind of scratching my head against it. And April and I again watched this trailer, an hour ago, and she was like, "There's 3 seasons of this already." Creep Show, which was that was a movie in the early 80s. Was that a Stephen King? Or am I thinking of Tales of the Dark Side?
No, Creepshow was a Stephen King,
there we go.
Along with other Masters of Horror anthology movie. Stephen King actually played a role in it. He played the bump.
There we go.
So it was a very unique anthology horror film, which they did a lot of those in the 80s and 70s and 80s and even 90s. Right. I really enjoyed. So they did a second Creepshow, I believe, anthology, and then they just decided to make a series of basically 1 hour long horror, just episodes, and it's all on Shudder. So Shudder, I don't know, Matt, if
Right.
that's on in Canada or not, but basically it's a horror dedicated streaming service. So they do original
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
They also have a big collection of really unique horror films, and it's also part of AMC, so you can get the AMC Plus app and get the Shudder content there.
Right.
It's only streaming. It's only there. It's actually a pretty good service, and it's pretty cheap. It's like $6 a month, so it's not bad.
Yeah, it's about par for the course. Yeah, it's funny you should mention AMC Plus because we had a bundle that was AMC and Stars that we had for Walking Dead and for Outlander. They're both over now, so I got to. I'm glad I thought of it because I'm like, oh, the billing date's coming up. Got it. Because yeah, these stream. I know that there's apps out there that help you track all the apps you have. I probably should download one of those because a lot of them just kind of slip through the cracks if you don't put it in your calendar, which sometimes I forget to do. But yeah, I will. It looks like season 4. Oh, this entire series is done by Greg Nicotero, who's behind The Walking Dead, a large portion of it, or at least certainly was early on. And then George Romero inspired series. Okay, that was kind of a run-on sentence that I couldn't really figure out what they were trying to say. I mean, Todd, for what it is, I think it seems like it knows what it is. Because it just looked pretty silly to me. And the bit with the ghosts, and there's a photograph here in the article that we're looking at, the ghosts that are in the grocery store. I mean, that looks very, very, very cheap. But again, if it's an inexpensive service and it's horror, we all know that horror is made on a shoestring budget, because how much money do you really need to make a good gross out? And they have they keep showing a werewolf character that looks just like the werewolf from An American Werewolf in London, which was, to me, the penultimate classic werewolf movie. If I had to pick one to exist, that would be it, because it was great. Plus, there were boobs in that too. There's boobs in that too, which I know we keep talking about boobs, believe it or not.
Oh, Adrienne Barbeau was in the first Creep Show.
No,
remember her?
Oh, Creep Show. Okay.
Yeah, she was in that, and there was a throwback to that creature. That creature was also in Creep Show 1 in one of the segments, like a creature that was in a box.
Gotcha.
So, and the cool part about this is, yes, these are tongue in cheek. They always had a sense of humor about them. A lot of it was like redemption tales or like revenge, and you did something bad, so this was what was going to actually be your undoing. And I like the fact that they included Tom Atkins, who's just a great, he is a character actor who is in the original Fog, Escape from New York, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, and Night of the Creeps.
Oh, gotcha.
I love him. And in fact, I love that these actors can still have a role and they have a fan base. They are niche, but I'm excited for this. Friday, this comes out Friday the 13th in October. How lucky are we that we get one of that?
We
and I'm excited.
have one. Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah, I'm excited for spooky season. We always do it every year, so I hope this is cool, and I will get the Shudder app for like a month or so, or get AMC Plus and get both, and check it out.
Matt, I have to tell you, a real irony of Todd's love of Halloween is that he does not dress up. Won't do it. We did hey, we're going to dress up, and we had a guest that week. I dressed up, the guest dressed up, and Todd was wearing a hat. That's Todd's dressing up.
I got
you know what? It's okay.
I had a mask and and you're only this far up, so it's like I had a mask and I couldn't wear it because you wouldn't see my face.
All right, Matt, are you hearing all these excuses? It was last year. It was last year or the year before. He was the mayor of Halloween Town, so it was something he made up, but it had a hat.
And
it had like anyway, okay, moving on. Oops. All right. Thank you, Watch. I had this on Do Not Disturb. My Watch is still talking to me. Sorry. Moving right along, we have the potential rebirth and then subsequent international death of physical media by Disney. There was an announcement about a week ago that the great spinoff of Predator, Prey, which was on Hulu last year, and I absolutely love. Todd, I know you were a big fan, is getting a 4K Blu-ray release after not having a physical release at all because it was a streaming-only piece of content. Now we're looking at Disney Plus releases of The Mandalorian, and I hear also that releases of MCU Disney Plus titles are going to make their way along. But I then subsequently heard that while this is moving forward, I believe in North America, down in Australia, they've kind of cut it off at the knees. So I guess I just don't get. It would seem like that would, I know maybe it's a distribution issue. You got to ship them overseas or whatever. They don't have local distribution, local production. But this is really it's a 360 if it was 20 years ago, but really it's a 180. Because Todd's like a 360.
360.
Yeah, we turned all the way around. If it was 20 years ago, but again, this is. We were getting into an era where everything will be streaming forever. Remember how everybody used to be so confident, and that's on Netflix. It'll always be on Netflix. I can see it whenever I want. I don't have to have a disc. I don't have to put a disc in the thing. I can be traveling and I can watch, for a while, like Netflix was part of certain hotel TV, so you could log in. I travel with the Roku because I'm in a hotel half of the week for my work, so I always plug in my own Roku and watch my own stuff. So streaming is super key, but with everything that's going on, and actually that touches on our next story as well. A great a show cut down in its prime was sold off for tax reasons. With that kind of stuff happening, physical media turns around being the only thing you can really count on, or actually purchasing something digitally, which again, for this next thing I'm going to reference, that's exactly what I did. So Todd, where do you think this is going? Is this going to be a flash in the pan, or are we headed back to the dark ages of physical stuff?
I think that the tough part about this is there's just too much content. So to expect everything to come out physically is a fool's errand. I mean, we were hearing about, yes, the MCU shows, and maybe when a new Disney thing is coming out with those characters, like we get the next Captain America film, we might get Captain America and the Winter Soldier released. But yeah, I mean,
I would buy that. Because,
how many shows were released on the Disney Channel? Are there DVD releases of all those? I mean, there's just too much content to do this and expect it. And who has the room for all of it? Like, I remember sitting in my car back in the day when I had a CD player in my car. It was all physical. You had to have a binder of CDs.
Yep, a book. Yep.
I still have one of those, and I bought it a couple years ago when we do shows, for the chapter, for the Star Trek Fan Club chapter, like we have one next weekend. I have a TV and a dedicated Blu-ray player, and then a huge book that has all of the classic series and movies on disc because I like to play it during the show. But I mean, the thing is, if you're looking on, it's this thick. And it folds open. It folds open like that book Indiana Jones had at the beginning of the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he's showing the army guys the Ark of the Covenant, and he's got to unsnap it, and he's like, "Here's a picture of it right here." That's basically what it is. So yeah, I would agree with you. Something would have to be really well regarded, or it would be 6 months, a year after the fact that something's come out and they're saying, hey, people really like this, or it's got good buzz, or the minutes per watch, or however the hell it is that I've never really had a firm grasp of how those things make money, but it obviously has something to do with the minutes, because they talk about the Strange New Worlds is
keeping people around.
They're back on the top 10 list because there's this many minutes have been watched, or blah blah blah. So I would think this makes sense for something where they have really proven, like in the MCU they mention Loki season 1 or WandaVision, things that have really really clicked and people really enjoy, and there's still buzz about them even after all the time, where they're significant in the course of the MCU things that follow. And Mandalorian season 2, oh my god, Luke Skywalker, it was enormous. So I would be an advocate. It's funny, after all of these cuts, and the next story I'm going to talk about is Star Trek Prodigy. After that happened, I went and I didn't buy them all, but I filled up my Amazon list with all of the newer Star Trek shows on disc, because I'm like, I better buy these, even though like Picard, which kind of sucked for 2/3 of it, I've still got to buy it at some point, because what if it just goes poof? What if I can't find it anywhere?
I'd be curious to see how much of this was even a reaction to the strike, because I mean, like, they're looking for everything and anything in terms of ways to make money now.
Yeah,
I mean, Star Wars and the MCU is an easy sell, right?
Sure,
slap a pretty steel book on that, and almost any fan would be considering looking at it. So in this course of the last few months, they've gone from having their cake and eating it too, to a point now where they're struggling to do anything. Like you mentioned, Miss Marvel is now coming to ABC for the fall run. So I'd even be curious to see how much of this is just a reaction to, well, we're not making money the way that we've usually made money for the last number of years. How else can we make money now? It's Marvel and Star Wars. Throw it out there. People will buy it.
The old ways.
Yeah.
Disc, and then ad-based revenue on the dying television networks,
Mhm.
which is what even the latest announcement was. CBS is going to be showing the first 2 episodes of the first season of Strange New World. So that, going back a year. But again, for all of the people who said, oh, I'm not going to pay for Star Trek and blah, blah, they may see this and think, oh, good, my prayers have been answered. No, it's only the first 2 episodes. Now go
How do they get
subscribe to the
CBS?
service.
Do they have an antenna? I mean, they got to pay for cable. I mean, it's so
Right,
dumb.
exactly.
I don't know. Yeah,
Right, and that's all. Todd, you remember that clickbait article I shared with you and John earlier this week that was clearly written by some boomer who was like, "Oh, TV used to be free," and somehow he said with no commercials. And I'm like, "No, there's always been commercials because yeah, exactly. Maybe this was somebody who was a little, but every there's no such thing as a free lunch. Everything costs something. I worked in advertising for many years, and that's the cost you pay." So yeah, everybody's paying in some way, shape, or form. If you don't like commercials, just be prepared to pay more.
So
It's the only way.
I have a question for the younger member of our panel. The part that always gets me is we're still getting DVDs. Blu-ray's been around for 20 freaking years. This is like somebody trying to tell me, and you can get it on cassette as well. I'm like, can you even buy a standalone DVD player anymore? There's Blu-ray, and Blu-ray doesn't cost that much money. And they look horrible on modern TVs. You can't buy a 480p TV anymore.
You're absolutely right. When I bust out an old DVD, because I have, you guys, when I was showing you around my studio with the camera before we got on, behind my door wall is my stacker of my 2 side-by-side skinny DVD now Blu-ray holders, and I still hold on to some stuff. So if I go and I can't find something on streaming, I'll dig out that disc and pop it in, and I have a 4K DVD player, and I have a very nice television that Todd helped me find, and whatever I put on just generally ends up looking like garbage. It's just almost impossible to watch.
Matt, do you?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
do
one of
you
those-
do you own any DVDs, or is like I don't know. I just feel like it's the old people medium, and it's like, and I don't think they're ones buying this anyways.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't know who this is for, because like if I buy something, I'm not usually one for physical media. Everything that I either download or I I'll buy it because it's, like I mentioned, it's a cool steelbook, or it's something that I could not get by just interacting with that show on the given streaming service. So or so something that I want to keep. Like I have all of Scrubs on Blu-ray just because it's my favorite show of all time. And similarly, I don't want it to go away if I'm looking for it later down the road.
Yeah, like us, the 70s show, it's the same thing. We have all the 70s show, but it's on disc and it looks like trash, but we do have it.
Exactly. So like Friends, we have the entire, Friends collection on DVD just because that's what was that we could buy at the time. So I don't really know who the DVD stuff is for. Like I'd imagine it's just kind of like, I'd be curious to see what the returns are, or whether it's just, it costs next to nothing to make for them nowadays. So whatever goes off the shelf is still something. Because again, for me, even just to consider buying physical media, it's like, okay, why is this physical thing better than just me interacting with it online? Is it the steelbook case? Is it extra features that I don't have? Is it this, that, or the other? But the DVDs, I don't know.
The fab, the features and benefits, one of the very cornerstones of marketing. Yeah, exactly. What makes this noteworthy as opposed to not having it? Why do I got to have it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly correct. So this will be interesting. So we'll keep an eye on this. I'm kind of curious if this is an attempt that rises and kind of falls. But also, speaking of rising and falling, I'll put a cap on the news with something very brief. I had mentioned several times the last segment, Star Trek Prodigy, which is an animated program. We got that in 2021. It was a Nickelodeon joint with Paramount Plus. Which made Paramount Plus at that time the home of all Star Trek. They had everything, including the dreadful animated series from the 70s. We don't need to talk about that. But in a recent brilliant tax-cutting measure, Prodigy disappeared entirely. It became shortly available. Well, the entirety of it became shortly available to purchase digitally and physically. I managed to go in and I spent my $20 to buy the first half of the season. And I was very lucky because several weeks later when I looked, the other half was just there. So I paid $20 for the whole season. So I do own it, and that's nice. But the show was cut by Paramount Plus, complete fan uproar. And then they said, we're going to shop it around to find a new home. But as we've been talking about, when these streamers and these other companies are burning money, how's anybody going to buy anything? So this week, over the Netflix headquarters, which is also the home of, I think, KTLA, one of the big TV LA stations, said when April and I were out in LA earlier this year after the cruise, we were taking a 5-hour bus tour and we drove through Hollywood and saw this. So I'm like, ooh. But there has been a one of these petition things, change.org, which I hate, but I still signed it, that garnered enough attention that it led to a old-fashioned airplane pulling a banner that says hashtag Save Star Trek Prodigy. And there was a great photo on Twitter X showing it. So is this going to save Star Trek Prodigy? Dunno, but you know what? I love seeing it out there. LA, of course, being the classic home of where Star Trek was born. So I'm glad to see the great representation. So that's good. Todd, you did you ever tune in and watch a couple episodes of the show, or did it pass you by?
I watched the beginning of it, and I thought it was fine. The protagonist was kind of annoying, and I'm
Yep,
like,
that was yep.
but it's like a show like that. I think you have to watch more of it to really get a feel
True.
for it.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
it
I was the same way.
it wasn't making me that excited because the Star Trek hook was pretty slim, so really wasn't driving me to it.
Right. It has got, and again, it's garnered a lot of acclaim with fans. And of course, you know, Paramount Plus being like, we're the home of all Star Trek. And now we've essentially eliminated one of the shows from existence, or at least from, you know, this platform, but it's still kind of wound its way back. So interesting. I have high hopes. Netflix would be a great home for it. But, you know, Todd, what's the latest rumble with Disney that Apple might come along and buy them or something because they've got all the money and Disney has none? Maybe it'll end up there.
I don't think Apple will buy Disney, but I think Apple will buy parts of things. Like I've heard there's potential interest in ESPN because Apple they have some streaming of sports already, and getting ESPN would be a big deal. But ESPN is a big money hole right now because all these contracts with the sports.
Money hole. Right.
I guess we'll see how it goes. But Matt, with Star Trek and other like failed shows where they try to bring it back, is there any like shows that like were canceled? You're like, and they actually had a successful like campaign that actually worked?
I mean, Clone Wars went away and then came back for the final kind of season 7. That right, like I'm a huge fan of Clone Wars. So to see that kind of go away when it did was crappy, but it was nice that it did kind of come back at least for one more season. I think the one that the one that I'm currently really vying for would be Spectacular Spider-Man. I still think the best, cartoon adaptation of that character. And like just that show was incredible and what it was building to was amazing. So seeing that character again in Across the Spider-Verse was amazing, but I want Spectacular Season 3 so badly.
And that one was quite some time back, wasn't it? Am I thinking of the one the early aughts or a different one? Okay, yeah, all right. Yeah, I guess so. Family Guy was a great example of that. That was canceled and it was gone for a couple of years, and then it's been back on ever since 2005.
Lucifer on Fox, and then that went to Netflix, and they got like 2 more seasons. So,
and there was Futurama, there was American Dad. So yeah, and we're talking about animated properties all. So yeah, let's hope so. So anyway, hashtag Save Star Trek Prodigy. Give them your support if you have an occasion. But with that, we are out of news. It is time to get out that Fuber app, that feeble Uber app. The Geek Easy awaits down in Scugtown, Nastyville, talking about what we're enjoying this week. So let's get to it.
Talk nerdy to me. Talk nerdy to me.
Sitting in the Geek Easy, cover band's playing, drinks are poured, and we are ready to get our nerd on. It's early, so I still have some coffee left over. But, Irish coffee might happen later on. So with that, we're talking about all the things we're nerding out about. So, Matt, what does get you feeling nerdy these days?
I'm watching Harley Quinn, the animated series.
I got to get back to that.
Really surprisingly enjoying it. I tried watching it when it was first coming out, and it was for no reason. I just kind of fell off of it in its first few episodes. I've gone back and started binging it in the last couple of weeks, and I'm in season 2 now, and really, really enjoying it. The writing's fantastic. The voice acting is completely awesome. Jim Gordon in that show kills me every time he shows up on screen. It's just
Christopher Minnelli from SVU.
Oh my gosh.
It's just such a funny, weird, off the wall take on a lot of these characters. And like again, Clayface and King Shark, like there's so much good here that I'm just really, really, really enjoying it. Having a blast with it. Excited to keep going with it. I started Doom Patrol after it was heavily recommended to me many, many times by a good friend of mine. And I'm getting towards the end of season 1. I'm not completely hooked yet. I like what it's doing, but there's just something about it. Like it kind of falls into the same well as like Umbrella Academy for me, where it's just like I was enjoying it and I kept watching it to see what happens next, but I wasn't in love with the show at any point. And I find that that's kind of where I'm at with Doom Patrol right now. I'll keep going because everything I hear about the show is fantastic. And there's nothing inherently wrong with it. There's just something about it that isn't entirely clicking with me, but I'm curious enough to keep going. Brendan Fraser is fantastic in the role along with the rest of the cast. So again, not a massive familiarity with these characters outside of what this is. So maybe that's kind of where I'm missing that connect, but I'm curious to keep going with it. Cool. And then for us anime fans out here, Jujutsu Kaisen is picking up its second season again in just a couple days. It is coming up on one of like the most hyped cores from the manga that I've ever heard. Like it's fever pitch right now. Even like sites on X that don't usually even talk about anime are starting to cover it. Like it's huge. So to see they put out a trailer a couple days ago that looks incredible. The animation on that show is always some of the industry best, and everything that I'm hearing about this core is that it's supposed to be incredibly devastating and incredibly good. So the first kind of 4 or 5 episodes of the second season started a couple months ago and then went on a break, and now it's setting up for the next major one, so it's coming back shortly. So those are kind of the 3 major things that I'm on right now.
Nice.
Well, Matt, you're hitting me because I just started Harley Quinn season 2, so I'm in it. Doom Patrol, I am on season 2. It is a show, yes. Nice. It takes time. It's abrasive at time, and it fights back at you because once you get momentum with certain characters, then you find out, oh wait, they have more trauma from something else, and it just and it's so weird and strange that it does fight back. And Doom Patrol was always a weird Vertigo book, so it's this is doing a really good job of representing how weird that book was, and not letting you just roll with it. It does challenge you.
There's no roll with it. Yeah, I don't know that I've made it past that first season too. And with Harley, I was up until this current season. It's just it's yucks a minute because it's so off the wall and wild. So I totally appreciate that.
Yeah, and Jujutsu Kaisen, my son's the big anime fan in the house. We watched Demon Slayer, and a few others. And I asked him about the show, and he's like, doesn't seem interested, which is weird to me. So I don't know, because I typically watch my anime with my son. So he's going to be a senior this year. So we'll have to figure out some way that we connect on these things, because it's a good way to connect with each other and just kind of talk about animation, because I do love animation of all types. So very, very cool. Well, if you recommend it highly, then I may just check it out myself, and I'll watch it, and then he'll start watching it with me, just because that's what he does. He's like, oh, what you watching? Okay. Oh, okay.
I do. It's cool and kind of gross and kind of weird, and the animation is awesome. It's basically a number of like high school students that are essentially fighting demons and ghosts kind of thing. So they go in and they
that old trope.
Yeah, exactly. Ghost high, ghost fighting demon high. I'm down.
Exactly, but it's awesome. It's really, really well done.
Good deal.
Okay, well, very, very good. Well, thank you for that. And very quickly, this thing I'm going to talk about is going to be covered in a Patreon episode of Fansplaining, which is going to be all about Babylon 5. So I don't want to go deep in here because Charlie's not a Babylon 5 fan, and Matt, you've probably never heard of Babylon 5.
Familiar with the name, no idea what it is.
Okay, familiar with the name. That's as close as a lot of people get.
Well, it's considering there hasn't been new content in almost 18 years. And when it was on, you were probably in junior high or elementary school. It's a very much a niche series, which is fine. Not everybody loves it. But Babylon 5, the cool part about this is Babylon 5 is a TV series that I loved in college. I would record it off of TNT every day because this was a weird show. It was a syndicated show. Then TNT, which is owned by Warner Brothers, picked it up. And they picked it up like 4 seasons in. They said, okay, we're going to take the show and we're going to make a new movie to introduce everybody to it. And then we'll make another season of this on a bigger budget, hopefully. And then they did a spin-off. They did some standalone movies. They did a spin-off called Crusade. And this is their first content in 18 years, and it's Babylon 5: The Way Home. It was a Blu-ray, 4K Ultra, and digital release. I bought it that because I want to give away somebody the Blu-ray. Didn't come with the DVD. Thankful for that. Holy crap!
Yeah, right. Let's move it forward. Yeah, move the ball.
This is and Babylon 5 is basically it's a space station. Has a lot of history. There are previous Babylons that were numbered that had been sabotaged, blew up or something, but this is the 5th iteration, and a really cool storyline that J. Michael Straczynski wrote. And he basically, when he created it, he did a 5 season arc that he created from the beginning. So it was kind of a new way on approaching television that is now taken off. Obviously, that whole have an arc, ongoing storyline. Very cool. This is really a standalone story about John Sheridan, who was the commander of Babylon 5, who then basically gets elected as president of the United Council of planets, and it's just a one-off story about basically it's a man out of time where he's transported to the different alternate realities. It's just a small little story within that scope, and it's fine. It didn't blow my
It's
socks
fine.
off. No, it didn't blow my socks off.
Todd says it's fine. The way you describe it doesn't blow my socks off either. But the proof is in the pudding.
Well, exactly. This feels like a smaller project that you're just getting feelers out to get, the old fans back. Maybe somebody new will pick it up. It would be very hard for anyone to pick it up based on this with all the characters. They don't really do a good job of introducing them. The other part is a lot of the cast is dead. They've died. I found out that, and this show is known for the commander that was in the first season. He was just left, and Bruce Boxleitner came in to play the new commander. Didn't know why. Apparently, he left the show because of mental health issues, and he could not perform the role. Anxiety. He was having some weird things. So J. Michael Straczynski helped him through it. Said, "Can you just get through this?" Helped him through it. Kept up with him, and they did bring him back in another role later on the show. But he ended up having a relapse, stopped taking his medicine, and killed himself. Very tragic. I didn't know that story, but it was just a really great video I watched on it. Michael J. Straczynski was talking about it. So I'm glad this is happening. There's talks about a reboot of the show, which I think is important. And I hope they bring back some of the heritage players back. But once again, this feels like a smaller experiment to see if there's really interest in Babylon 5. And I don't know if this will make a lot of fans happy, but for me, it was like, it's fine, which is not what you want.
It was funny because I've told you before, Todd, I have a client in my work life who's a huge fan, and he engaged me on Babylon 5 when I first met him. He's been a client of mine for about a year. And so I saw him earlier this week, and I'm like, what'd you think of that movie? It was okay. I like my partner's got it. He's seen it. I'm sure he's going to be talking about it. So hopefully there are others out there that felt that it was more than just okay. So I hope so
too. I haven't looked at reviews either. I've kind of stayed away from it. But the cool part about this is it is the first animated animated movie with Babylon 5. It looks beautiful. I thought it was great artwork. The voice acting a little hollow at times. They did bring in different voice actors to play some of the characters who obviously have passed along. So kind of a mixed bag. Phil Lamar, it's funny because he's in this too. He's the voice, even though he's playing a different character. So I hope we get more of this, but if not, then at least we got something. But once again, it's been 18 years, so
good to have
we'll
something.
see how this goes. And then lastly, Strange New Worlds. Matt, once again, I don't know if you're into Star Trek, but Charlie is a uber fan. He obviously has a podcast. He runs a Star Trek portion of the club for the United States. And Strange New Worlds is the best Star Trek, I would say, to get anyone into it. It's new, doesn't have a lot of legacy, so you don't have to worry about catching up. And a lot of people are jumping into it now, which is great. It's on Paramount Plus. We had the finale of season 2, and it blew my socks off. It was great.
I'm glad.
I don't want to say much more about that, but had a classic cliffhanger, which we haven't had in a long, long time. It was really great.
The last white knuckle cliffhanger we had for Star Trek was in 1990. It was the season 3 of Next Generation finale with the Borg, Best of Both Worlds, where Picard was Borgified, and at the end of it, Riker is standing on the Enterprise bridge and gives the order to fire to destroy the Borg cube with Picard on it. And then Patrick Stewart always tells this story that, man, that summer I was driving my convertible down the PCH, and somebody pulled up next to me at a stoplight, and the person looked over at me eyes to eyes and said, "You ruined my summer."
That's actually what I was going to ask, Todd. So thank you for bringing that up, because it's like the only kind of real interaction I have with Star Trek was the J.J. Abrams movies with Chris Pine, which I actually quite enjoyed, given my lack of experience with Star Trek. I like Chris Pine as an actor.
That's fair.
I thought they were fun movies. And I've always it's always been a franchise that felt very daunting to get into because I just never know where.
Yeah. Big time. 60 years of content almost. Yeah.
So if Strange New World is the point to hop in, then maybe I'll give this a go.
Ooh,
I am curious to engage with it.
It's essentially,
I
mean, Enterprise is the only thing before this, right, Charlie?
Chronologically, yes.
Yeah, but I would ignore that. And Stranger Worlds, basically, you're starting at scratch. You're going to know some of the names, but these are we're all kind of getting to know these characters for the first time in this way. So you're right there with all of us. So it's really a fun show.
I would
Yeah,
love
I'm in.
to, much like I've talked with our partner Mark. I got him to watch an episode of Lower Decks, which is the animated Star Trek that I'll talk about in a second here. I would love to maybe do a one-on-one with you, and if you watch that first episode or couple episodes, just get your impressions as a newcomer and saying like, "Hey, what did you really think?" So if that comes to pass and you watch that, we should have a conversation about that. I think that'd be pretty cool.
I'm definitely down. Like I said, I'm all about geekdom. And again, Star Trek is something that I've always kind of side-eyed from a distance because I've been curious, but just not sure where. But I'll definitely give this a go. I mean, I love sci-fi, so I'm in.
That's a good deal. Look at that. I got 2 Patreon segments lined up. The newbies to Star Trek. That sounds like fun.
The great part about it too is it's episodic, so you get a lot of feels for every character. You don't have to worry about like this overall arc. They can really tell really unique stories from different genres too. There's just a musical episode, which was a lot of fun. The songs were okay, but I still thought it was a lot of fun. Goofy like we're in fantasy world, so they do play with the genre pretty well. So good luck with that, Matt. I don't know, Paramount Plus. Hopefully you can get that in Canada.
I just got a 30-day free trial from yesterday, so there's a reason for me to check it out.
Yeah, let's talk on socials in the next couple of weeks if you get a chance to check it out. I will tell you that over Labor Day weekend on Code 47, which comes out on that Monday, we will be doing a deep dive both into the musical episode, which was called Subspace Rhapsody, and this finale, of which the name I'm currently forgetting, but it was a great cliffhanger and had to do with very battle heavy the Gorn, which is an alien race of lizards that we previously didn't know a ton about, but as part of Strange New Worlds, they've really become a big bit of it. So there's only 20 episodes in existence, Matt, so you could crank through those in a month, no problem at all. So cool. I am just with so much travel and stuff, I'm not consuming quite the way that I'd like to be. Plus I read comics for our spinner rack that Todd and I do, one of our Patreon shows. I talked about that I was reading the old G.I. Joe comics. I talked about that last week, but I was really excited late this week. Just opened up my email, and my contact at Viacom, through my friend Kurt, who's a friend of the show, he's a journalist, introduced me to contacts at Viacom. I got a screener of the first 8 of 10 episodes of season 4 of Lower Decks, which drops on September 7th on Paramount Plus. There, I did my plug. That's why I got it. And I have watched through. I've been trying to stagger, but just not. They're just so good. I'm enjoying watching them so much that now we're on episode 7 of 8. So I'm like, I really ought to stretch these out. But I'm now, 2 months ahead of where everybody will be on September 7th. But really a lot of fun. Todd, the show is not a favorite of yours. I get it, so I won't drill down on it too much. But fun little touchstones. I've read articles ramping up to this that the creators of the show really wanted to give you more Easter eggs that kind of go around the entirety of all of the other 8-9 Star Trek shows that exist. Here's a touch. The first episode centers around Todd's least favorite Star Trek show from the 90s. You don't need to say what it is, but Todd, it was really a lot of fun. And it's a standalone. So I challenge you. I think you might get a good giggle out of it because it pokes fun at this show that you're not fond of. I think there's a potential you could find your way laughing through it. That one will be on September 7th.
You might like Lower Decks, Matt, because you're an animation fan. It is a very tongue-in-cheek, comedic,
very satirical
Star Trek.
Yeah.
So you may like it. Okay. It doesn't do a lot for me, but the funny part is when you watch Strange New Worlds, when you do, there is an episode where characters from Lower Decks actually show up on Strange New Worlds. So you get a live-action take on those characters with the actual the voice actors around them. So it's a very fun crossover episode.
Yeah. So in watching Strange New Worlds, you'll get a taste of Lower Decks. And if you get a taste of Lower Decks, obviously also on Paramount Plus, you'll still have it on September 7th. So maybe you want to give it a shot. So
no pressure whatsoever, Matt.
No pressure whatsoever. We're just throwing out alternatives. We finally saw, and even Todd, you've not seen the end of this because I was kind of dropping lines to you and John in our group chat about the show Community, which was on NBC, if I remember correctly.
It was, yes.
For either 4 or 5 seasons. And I know it got canceled and it got picked up by Yahoo streaming something or other
Yahoo
for a
Screen.
Yahoo Screen in 2014. And I got to tell you, I had seen the first 3 seasons with a lot of the paintball and the different and the last 2 seasons were just 13 episodes. So they were very much like shows that you would see today. They're just really very cut down from your traditional network, 22 or 24 episodes that you see in even in a modern lens. They got into episodes where they did an entire animated G.I. Joe spoof episode called G.I. Jeff with Jeff Winger was Joel McHale's character. I was and it was April and we were binging it. So this was later. I think it was later in the night, maybe last week. This came on, and I was just like, I texted you and John in all caps. I said, "OMFG, there is a GI Joe episode of Community called GI Jeff." I was flipping out, and just poking all the tropes and all the thing of that highly problematic Sunbow cartoon in a modern lens. If you watch that, Todd and I grew up with. I got a poster on my wall. I'm a huge GI Joe fan, but they use this as a way to poke fun at that show and then also do some character development for Joel McHale's character. So it was great. And seriously, in the very last episode, which does a very, it's a very self-referential show. One of their characters, Abed, is he's on the spectrum, but he relates through TV and sitcom premises is what he always talks about. So the show really concludes in that fashion, but they do a bit, I don't want to spoil too much of it, but they do an after credits or a mid credits, I'm trying to remember, of a family playing a board game of the show that turns into an existential crisis for this fake TV family. And then at the end of it, there's a disclaimer read by the voiceover guy that had me was side splitting. Todd, I tell you, and it's on Netflix, by the way, if you want to tune in. Todd, I would say if nothing else, watch G.I. Jeff and then watch the final episode and get back to me, because I think you'll be laughing your ass off. It was a perfect way to end that show. And that show is still alive. There are talks of a TV movie being on Peacock in the future when the strike is over, but I would say within the next couple of years. But awesome show. We all loved it. I mean, all of us, in our stable really enjoyed that show when it was on, but it was one that they ended it in a way that I feel was very faithful to the concept of the show. It was still funny. Highest recommendation, watching the entirety of the series. It was good stuff.
Yeah, Community is fantastic. I loved my time with it. I am curious to hear, I remember watching the later seasons that, they always felt a little bit different compared to the first few. But I was watching them as they were happening. So I think for me, I think it's time for a Community rewatch, because I haven't rewatched that series in quite a long time since it was airing. Yeah, and I remember always feeling the last couple seasons being a little bit of the magic was lost. Yeah, but maybe it's something I just got to go back to and give another opportunity to.
Because they had changed gears. Chevy Chase was fired.
Dan Harmon, the showrunner, left or was forced off. Yeah.
No, well, I was going to say Donald Glover left to pursue his career in Atlanta and being in Star Wars and things like that. They brought in Paget Brewster as a regular character, and the characters graduated, but they turned into a Save Greendale community, so they still met in the study room. So that part of the concept, but then they got into more non-student adventures where they're trying to do this, and the dean became more of a fleshed out character. There was a great episode where he was going to come out in a way to and then they parodied the Dolly Parton song Jolene as Gay Dean, and I was just Gay Dean. I'm sorry, Dolly.
Yeah, the Dean. I am the Dean cosplay right now. Yeah, I am the Dean.
There you go. Oh my goodness. Yes. So anyway, I would. Netflix, certainly in the U.S., probably in Canada as well, is where you'll find Community right now. So anyway, with that, we end our time at the Geek Easy. Time to skip out on the check. I know they spit in our food because they always do, but I got to get out that Air Qantas app. Time to get us down to the land down under. Hologram Tina and the Mutants Await, where we're going to talk about Ahsoka.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome!
Thank you, Tina. We're sitting in the Thunderdome where the mutants have been gathered for a topic or a game to be entertained. And this week, we're going to be talking about Ahsoka, the TV series on Disney Plus that just launched on Tuesday with 2 episodes. I believe we're getting episodes all through September. So I don't want to do the math, but that might get us to 8. Anybody know? Anybody know how many episodes we're getting?
I think it is 8.
I was going to say Kenobi was 6, but Mando was always 8. So I'll go with 8 because I don't feel like they'd show us 2 and then only have a month left in the chamber. I think they'd want 6 weeks. So that's my guess.
Yeah, and normally a lot of Star Wars talk.
Confirmed.
Excellent.
Yeah,
excellent.
Very good.
And so normally, Holocron Chronicles is our primary Star Wars podcast, but because of the strike and alliances and things like that, and we're letting everybody who runs a show take their own approach, they don't want to discuss strike content. while it's going on. We basically said this was content that was made beforehand. It's out there. It's not like we're pulling the plug on our subscription services, so it's kind of weird not to talk about it. And if you don't want to hear about the show because you're the same, definitely support that, and you can come back later after, hopefully everything's done, and enjoy and discuss this show.
Right.
But,
and again, myself being the co-host of Holocron, it's Mark's show. I'm taking my leads from Mark, and that's totally fine with me. But Todd and I again had a conversation about this, and we thought, you know what, we'll take a swing at it. Doesn't really feel like it's hurting anything, so we will do that. But yeah, tune in over in Holocron. We've got some fun stuff planned that is non-Ahsoka related content. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're still going to be having some fun over there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ahsoka, this show is Dave Filoni's baby. It is essentially season 5 of Rebels. I did the catch up where I watched the Clone Wars that were considered essential, and then also Rebels, plus also Tales of the Jedi. There was a episode. There's a 3-part thing with Ahsoka. So I watched the one where she did her training with Anakin. That was kind of the one I watched primarily.
Yep.
So that's where I'm at. So I feel like I'm in a good space to talk about this show. But before we get all in on the show, I wanted to get both of your thoughts on, because you're very much deep into Star Wars, but what is your thought process on how do you pitch this to people who are not all in on Star Wars, haven't watched any of the animation, and maybe only met Ahsoka through The Mandalorian? Do you feel like, how do you approach that with a new viewer?
If I might, I think you hit the nail on the head. Your real connective tissue within a Disney environment is The Mandalorian, because that was a very exciting turn. Seeing her appear, Rosario Dawson is a very well-known actress. She's got, she's of great regard, I think, within the fan community. So that not just tossing somebody in there like, here you go, but having a name actress take on that role at that time, having that be essentially a very pivotal episode of The Mandalorian. That's where we learned the child's name of Grogu, because Grogu communicated telepathically through the Force with Ahsoka, and we learned the first bit about his backstory that we learned at all. That was very pivotal, and then it set in motion a key plot point of these 2 episodes that has to do with one of the villains. So if I was a pitch man saying that here is Ahsoka, a character that you've learned. Here's the journey that she's on to find this Grand Admiral Thrawn, which you may or may not know anything about. But Grand Admiral just makes it sound like he's a mucky-muck bad guy. You don't know where he is. You don't know why. But based on how you potentially enjoyed this episode, it's a journey that you're going to want to take. Along the way, we'll be introduced to some other characters. They won't lean super heavy on it. Like, there's this green chick. She's part of the Rebel Alliance. Yes, you never saw her during the movies, but hey, the rebellion is big. And there were other people besides, there's more than one woman in Star Wars. There's more than just Leia, so there's other rebels out there on other ships, other fleets, blah, blah, blah. I have an OC character myself from Star Wars who is a mucky-muck big rebel pilot guy. And obviously he doesn't really exist, but the rebellion is huge. Think about the U.S. military. Think about the Navy and the fleets around the world. Everybody doesn't know everybody, So, I would probably, my main spin, if I was to try to sell this show to a non-Rebels Clone Wars watcher, was, hey, remember that one great episode of The Mandalorian, and this Force wielder who is not a Jedi, or just call her a Jedi, make it simple. She's a Jedi, ex-Jedi, hidden Jedi, whatever. And the journey that she started, this is that journey continuing to move forward. So watch it and enjoy. There you go.
I think for me, one of the things about the show is I think it did a really solid job in its first 2 episodes of being, if you are a huge fan of Clone Wars and Rebels, to like hear all the characters that you know and love. But I think they gave us enough to be like, I like likening it to the first season of The Mandalorian. We didn't have a lot of context for a lot of these characters before we knew them, right? Yeah. Like there's incredible backstory here for, yes, a lot of these characters, for Hera, for Chopper, for all these characters, but for newcomers to the series, or newcomers to these characters, I think there's enough here. You have your Jedi, right? Or ex-Jedi, hidden Jedi, whatever you want to call them. But you have your Jedi. You have another force of evil that they're trying to get to, and I think the setup is enough for people to get invested in. And I'm interested to see over the course of the next few years how this will kind of be looked back on, just because I think it's a very, very strong start. But with all of the plans that we know that they're doing, Filoni's obviously going to have his movie that brings everything together,
right?
And I have a feeling this is almost going to have like a reverse MCU effect, where as people kind of get into this, and as the hype begins to build more and more towards this finale of everything that's come before, I think it'll become even more successful with time.
Oh, kind of create a look back effect is kind of what
exactly
you're saying,
right,
people
because
go backwards.
and people are used to this by now. The MCU is a giant glaring example of people getting invested in worlds or characters that they're not as familiar with. So I think this is the perfect time to take something like Ahsoka and make it popular and bring it to the forefront of the fandom, because she's my favorite Star Wars character, bar none, like full stop. I love Rebels and I love Clone Wars. So I think here, just a simple setup of here's another Jedi and here's another story that you don't know about yet, I think is enough for people who know Star Wars. Like, I'm curious to hear my dad's thoughts about this, because again, he's an OG Star Wars fan. He's watched all the movies, but he hasn't seen anything outside of that. He's watched Mandalorian, he watched Boba Fett. So a lot of the characters that he knows and he enjoys are going to be present here in one way, shape, or form. And this is something new for him to engage in. So I'm curious to hear his thoughts. But I think this is the perfect time. I think this is the perfect time to bring Ahsoka and these characters to the forefront, because they are incredible. And if for whatever reason you do want to learn more, well, great. You have, 12 seasons worth of content that you can go back to if you really want to.
Right. Yeah, right.
Because this is going to touch on exactly. And this is going to touch on some weirder parts of Star Wars that haven't been present in the movie yet, with stuff like the world between worlds and so much more here. This is going to some interesting directions, possibly. So I feel like this could open up some really cool doors to the franchise as a whole.
I would say totally, but I would say the beauty of, you touch upon it on the MCU as being like a reverse MCU effect. Yes, people, maybe if you started with the Avengers films, you started even further back at the beginning. With Disney Plus in particular, unlike the wags at Paramount Plus, not that I want to bite the hands that feeds me, who, shedded a piece of content, all of that content, I mean, even Disney is starting to bring in, I think both the Tobey and the Andy Garfield Spider-Man films are now on Disney Plus, so they're drawing this content in, so you can simply say, okay, yeah, wow, I dig Ahsoka. Where does this start? Oh, it starts all the way back at this animated Clone Wars film that came out in the summer of 2008. I'll start there. Then I can watch 7 seasons of Clone Wars, 4 seasons or 5 seasons of Rebels. And then, I've already seen The Mandalorian. Let's say this hypothetical person, that's where they started. And then I can wrap my arms around absolutely everything, because I'm a continuity guy. I love canon. A lot of people don't feel that way. That's just my bent. I like to, the bear hug, being able to wrap your arm around story content and feeling like there's accessibility to everything that exists. In Star Wars, and again, I kind of compare contrast to Star Trek, where in Star Trek, only what you see on screen is considered canon. Anything else is Elseworlds, beta canon, because there are two wikis in Star Wars. There's memory alpha canon on screen, memory beta, which is everything else. Where with Star Wars, the Lucas Continuity Group, when they took that over in late 2014, going into January 2015, which was a new Star Wars #1, that was the beginning of all-encompassing canon. There was a Lucasfilm Continuity Group. Every comic book, video game, novel, yada, 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 everything was one big organic globule. So part 63 has to connect with part 147, and everything's connected, which is, it's a blessing and a curse, because you back yourselves into creative story points, you end up stuck in a corner. But then again, there is an overall mastery of a single narrative, even through the eyes of different creators. So it can be good, it can be bad, but it is what it is for Star Wars in particular.
Yeah,
Let alone with Filoni. Sorry, Todd, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, a bugaboo with me, though, is one of my favorite parts of the whole prequel era, which I'm not a big fan of it, is the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars, which
right.
we would have never got any of that. It's not canon, which to me is like, really? The thing that started off, they're like, nope. I guess if Dave Filoni, if he didn't do it, he doesn't want to acknowledge it. But that's one of my favorite things.
I don't see any reason why that couldn't be canon, because even thinking back on the content of that, and those were like 2.5, 3-minute shorts.
Yeah,
there was a season where, and nothing happened in them that was so earth shattering that it couldn't somehow fit into canon. So Todd, I'm with you. I don't see why those couldn't be canonized. I mean, they're on Disney Plus, but they're referred to as some kind of adventure label, much like they took from the holiday special, which is much ballyhooed, and we've talked about. They took the animated segment, which literally introduced Boba Fett as a character back in 1978. And they took that segment, and even though it's a terrible conversion of it, I mean, to watch it looks absolutely dreadful, but you can watch it on Disney Plus, but it's not, strictly speaking, considered canonical. So yes, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah,
and especially because what I find with a lot of what Filoni's doing is almost taking the worst parts of Star Wars over the last couple decades and retroactively almost making them better. Like I feel
Yeah.
like, everything that came with the Clone Wars and Rebels made the prequel era a little bit better. Now he's
Agreed.
seemingly trying to take the sequel trilogy and again retroactively make it make sense with Palpatine's return and everything in between. He's like sowing the seeds of being like, okay, I have all these story beats. How can I make this better and make more sense? And I feel like everything he's done so far has been fantastic to kind of almost retroactively take these things that people weren't as big of a fan of. I mean, like look at Hayden Christensen's return, right? How celebrated that was and how stoked people were to see him again when, 15 years ago, people wanted nothing to do with him. So it's an interesting turn.
Well,
Very good.
I think so there's a lot of approaches to it. I think the best thing for a lot of people, because there is so much content, I think there's going to have to be some really good guides out there to say these are what you should watch, because I'll have to say it, there's so much filler in the Clone Wars and Rebels with episodes that aren't great, not
like
good.
any
You're going to lose
like any
a lot
TV,
of people. Yeah, you're going to lose
Probably
a lot of people.
like,
so
any TV show of that era. And again, the Clone Wars came on in, I think, fall of 2008, because there was that animated film, which was really just 3 episodes kind of stuck together. And then they started with the regular series, and it was a rough watch at the beginning. The animation, it was just not there. And the stories, like almost any show, certainly of that era, and it's potentially less in this modern era, really had to stumble. They had to crawl before they could walk, before they could run, before they could fly, before it really took off and found its own narrative voice. But yeah, you're right. Clone Wars took the sequel trilogy, which is certainly a scripting mess in a lot of ways, though by concept, a lot of great things happened in it. But, Harrison Ford famously said to George Lucas in the production of the first Star Wars film, it's like, hey, George, you can write this stuff, but you sure can't say it. And George did not find that funny, but hell if it's not a great quote. And it's true. George just, high concept anyway. I don't know if you want to call it a high concept, but as far as a scripting marvel, he had his ex-wife Marsha Lucas, who helped edit the original trilogy. But Todd, you and I have waxed poetic on the fact that by the time he got to the prequels, he was kind of like Mr. Burns, and then Rick McCallum was his Smithers. He was, oh God, George, so good. Oh, everything you do. And he just he made Jar Jar Binks. Okay. Nobody stopped him.
He no longer collaborated. He essentially was no longer a cheerocracy. It was a Georgeocracy. So that's my new term. But so it is a different era of Star Wars now. George Lucas, bless him. He was apparently last seen at Robert De Niro's birthday party, and he was 80 years old. So George Lucas is not coming back to Star Wars. He enjoys life too much to deal with all the nonsense. He's enjoying his life. So let's not ask George to come back because fans want it. But we have this series. Now we've talked about the precursors. Now we're talking about Ahsoka. 2 episodes dropped. I watched the both of them. The first episode was almost an hour long, and quickly, just my viewpoint in the series, it is Rebels season 5. I liked it. And I will say, though, for someone who doesn't love Rebels or Clone Wars, I did not feel like it was a big deal to me. I didn't feel the weight. Ezra, if you don't know who he is, there's no drive to say who Ezra is and why you've seen him and things. Thrawn, talked up. I've seen Thrawn in Clone Wars. I don't understand why he is the most powerful guy in the universe, and they're making him out to be that way.
Right.
He's obviously a military commander. He was in charge of things, but the fact that he's going to bring unlimited power to the space betweens, I'm like, you got to give me a reason to really want to hate Thrawn. So I'm curious how quickly we'll see Thrawn and what he's going to do. But as of me, and I know Thrawn's we met Timothy Zahn, we saw his panel. Yeah, and I know I'm sounding like a hater. I liked how this was executed. I just don't get the stakes. The stakes don't seem that interesting to me because we already know this. Thrawn doesn't exist in where we're going. So once again, this era where he didn't change the game, he didn't destroy the universe. We did, and it's going to be the rise of the next order. So to me, in a lot of ways, that's why I've always felt like doing these prequel parts. There's just very little stakes. It's a lot of world building, but it doesn't feel like we're going to get anywhere that really changes the game. And to me, that's a little, I struggle with that because we stay in Star Wars where it's in this area, we're just adding more content, but we're not building to why Thrawn mattered because he really didn't. They lost.
I mean,
he didn't do anything. I mean, that's just my 2 cents.
It's absolutely a two-edged sword because again, even I've said, okay, you got a 30-year. A lot of things can happen in a 30-year period. A lot of wags will say, "Oh, Luke Skywalker, he didn't end up as a bitter old man in the EU. He had a wife and a kid, and blah blah." You don't know that he didn't have a wife and a kid within 30 years, and they both got hit by a bus or something. It could happen. There are story beats that are again. Could happen in past, and they could be, dramatically significant. You can enjoy watching them, but to Todd's point, we know the end game is the First Order, the Final Order, the Sith fleet on Exegol, and everything we saw in, the Rise of Skywalker. That's where everything ends. But yeah, you're right. What does Thrawn mean? How does it tie in? And so you're right. Your real world building and your stakes are how does this all come together in this big Filoni film where you have Boba plus Mando and Grogu and Ahsoka and the Rebels, characters, whatever it is. So you're right. It's more internal and less external. So the weightiness of it is lessened for, John Q Disney Plus subscriber. I get that.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
I think for me, the kind of big sell of this, and I think right now it's like the boogeyman, right? Thrawn is the boogeyman. You're like, the big sell will be, why is all this going to be important? But I think what kind of the intelligent way that I think that Filoni probably will anchor this and will kind of continue to drive it forward will be the characters. I don't think these are going to be there. You're going to have your galaxy ending stakes that will eventually, come to pass over the course of the next couple seasons and then the next movies that will follow. But I think what's going to be the massive kind of selling point for a lot of people will be these characters, because I think that's, as a Clone Wars and as a Rebels fans, it's awesome seeing these characters again. I care about them already. You obviously don't have that attachment yet, Todd, but that's kind of going to be the main role of this series. And I think it was the intelligent part of the first couple episodes to introduce these characters and give you slight hooks as to why they matter without showing you the whole hand yet, right? Because I feel like a lot of what we'll see over the course of the next season is, why is Thrawn such a threat? Why do these characters matter? So the attachment will be not because we know that they lose, but we don't know what happens to any of these characters in the sequel trilogy. We have no idea where any of these characters go. We have no idea what happens to any of them. So I think the kind of major sell will be, okay, getting you invested in these characters, not so much in the overarching state of the galaxy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So more of a character study, in some ways a smaller story. So, but yeah, as far as the big world ending stuff, if they say save that for the movies, because again, your first trilogy gave you the complete architectural framework. The prequel trilogy was supposed to ostensibly give you a solid basis for, Anakin Skywalker story or the Skywalker legacy as it all. And then obviously your sequel trilogy was meant to flesh that out for a new generation. Whether they were successful or not, that's definitely a matter of opinion. Some people love it, some people don't. But with this is a different corner, but it's telling a smaller story. But I don't know that you're really left feeling that that's what it thinks it's doing. So to Todd's point, it's like, where's the weight? Where's the gravitas? Where does this really matter? And again, wait and see. Maybe it'll turn out and matter, or maybe it'll be the Book of Boba Fett. We don't know.
Exactly.
We don't know. But we're on for the ride because this is what we do. And people who have enjoyed The Mandalorian, I think will at least be along for the first part of the ride. And if it sticks with them, it sticks. And there are plenty of Rebels fans out there. There are plenty of Clone Wars fans out there. So I feel like it's going to be a success. But again, what made The Mandalorian a success? It struck out. People just enjoyed the overall Star Wars.
It was a strange new worlds. Yeah. It was strange. It was starting from scratch, new character. There was not a lot of legacy. You just watched it and went along for the ride because it was through his eyes. Now, Matt, I know we haven't really talked about the show at all for my complaining. So when you saw this, being a Rebels fan, what were like the parts that you loved and you're like, you wish you got more of so far?
Well, I'm surprised with how much Ahsoka, Sabine, and Hera were getting. Like, I always knew that, like, obviously this was going to be Ahsoka, but I was a little bit nervous coming into it that we weren't going to get as much with the rest of the characters, and we got the polar opposite of that so far. I love Chopper; he's my favorite droid. So seeing him rattling around and
that was great.
It was awesome. So for me, like, I'm already invested in these characters. I'm already invested in this story. I want to see the rest of them. Right, I'm blanking on his name right now. Zeb. We saw Zeb briefly in
Mando 3.
Exactly. Last season, The Mandalorian. So I want to see, are they going to bring him back? I want to see where this stuff is going, because I am very, very curious based off of the finale of Rebels. Where are Ezra? Where is Thrawn? I want to see these characters again. So for me, just returning to this, I was curious to see how it was going to feel, and it was like honestly like stepping into a comfortable pair of shoes that you've had forever. I'm so excited to see these characters in live action, and so far all of the actors and actresses that have been brought to the table are doing a fantastic job embodying these characters.
Yeah.
For me, it's like coming back home, right? Like it's awesome to be here. So far, I'm very, very much in. Like I said, I'm glad that they've started to the focus of why is Ahsoka important? Why does Sabine matter? Because those two will be kind of our grounding force throughout the rest of the series. But that's kind of my major buy-in so far. It's just like I'm stoked to be back.
So
Same. Yeah,
with the
I'm
new
you.
with the new characters they've introduced, I really like them. I love Ray Stevenson. I love his Padawan.
Yes.
I guess
Yeah.
Padawan. I guess Sith, or he's still
No,
Jedi. I
he,
don't
he,
think he's
he
Sith.
calls her
Yeah.
Padawan.
Yeah.
Do you think she looks a little bit like Billie Eilish, or is that just me?
No,
I guess-
I think
Yeah,
she
a little bit.
she looks like the female companion of Die Antwoord, the South African band. She's got real
Yes,
short
yes.
bangs. Charlie, I have
You
to
got
show you a
me.
picture of her.
Yeah.
You got me there. But like, I got Billie Eilish. I'm like, I'm the bad guy. Oh!
So we've got those two characters, and then we've got a character. I don't know who it is. Harek, is that the name of the character?
Merrick, I think the Inquisitor.
Yeah,
Or-
the
okay.
masked character who took on Ahsoka at the end.
Gotcha.
So I don't know who that character is. Is it a new character?
I would say
Merrick?
Merrick was one of the general characters in Rogue One. So I don't know that it was Merrick, or it could be spelled differently.
He mentioned a character, but it was a masked Jedi or someone from there. We don't know who that person is yet.
Yeah.
You guys think that's someone?
It is Merrick.
Okay.
I'm curious. I am curious to see, because I do think it will be a character that we, as Rebels and Clone Wars fans, we do know. Whether, because I do think that there is potential for that character to be somebody that we from the fandom will know. But I am also very, very curious to see with Skull and Hati. What are they? Are they Jedi? Are they not? They're not Sith, but they're not Jedi. And I'm very, very curious to see what middle ground they strike, because what happened to them over the course of the fallout of Order 66. Because we know that in terms of timelines, Ray Stevenson's character would have been a Jedi along the same time that Anakin was.
Yeah, big time.
So it's like, what happened for this kind of inevitable fallout, and what's the kind of goal here?
Yeah.
I do think there's some interesting plot threads that they're dropping, and especially like, who is Merrick? There's a reason this character is masked, and in my opinion, this is going to be somebody we know.
Yeah, I like it. I like the intrigue, and again, we will know more. And this show was the return to form. Todd, I don't know if we talked about this last week. It was a return to form. I think we did. That echoes really the HBO model of appointment viewing. It was announced really just a week in advance instead of just being a regular Wednesday drop, which happens, it happens at midnight Pacific time. Here in the East, we get it at 3 a.m. and I'm not waking up to watch it. Now it's on Tuesdays at 9 p.m., which, I stayed up till 11 o'clock, way past my bedtime to watch it. But it was totally worth it. Totally worth it. But that's cool. Cool appointment viewing that every Tuesday night, at 9 o'clock Eastern, that you'll be tuning in to watch it. So yeah, keep it alive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really it's going to be interesting to see what we get next, because we have Ahsoka now. We get these 6 more additional episodes, and maybe this is a good question to ask. This is obviously leading to the Filoni movie that will be basically taking in all of these pieces of the Disney Plus series universe. Is there anything else we're getting after this that will lead into that movie, or is this the last piece? And then we're getting the movie.
For the time being that I can think of. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
I wouldn't be surprised if we got more seasons of everything, because I think they did say that when they announced the Filoni movie, that thing was like 4 or 5 years away at the earliest. And I'm sure with the strike and everything else going on now, that will take even longer. So I'd be surprised if we don't get more Mando, possibly more Boba, and even more Ahsoka, because I think what we're going to get with this season is the road to Thrawn and Ezra. I don't think the conflict will be resolved by the time that this season ends out. So I think they probably have a plan for more seasons of these shows over the course of the next few years, eventually leading to your big movie 5, 6, 7 years down the line, because I don't think that movie is imminent. I think they have a plan that they're trying to follow through on.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we get more seasons of what we have. I don't know if we're going to get anything more than that. I could see Ezra getting his own show potentially. I could see that being a possibility, but I don't know how much more we're going to get outside of more of what we have.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and of course everything is pie in the sky because nothing is being even written right now. So very interesting.
Yep.
Good deal. All right. Well, Todd, any final thoughts before we wind down?
No, I'm sure I have offended many Star Wars fans along the way, which is always my goal. No,
I don't believe in offense. I think we should, and we've always strived at Secret Friends. We're now celebrating almost 9 years of doing the show and 10 years of having our social network. That all viewpoints are valid. Nobody's opinion sucks. There's no, I don't deal with, Todd, the term I feel like I coined militant fanboyism. I don't, you're an idiot if you think I don't, to quote Chadwick Coleman in Infinity Wars Black Panther, we don't do that here. That's not something that we do at SFU. So I think all viewpoints are valid, but Todd's hatred of Star Wars is long reaching.
It's not hatred.
I know.
No.
I'm teasing.
I'm genuinely super stoked to see what you do think by the time that the season ends, because I think as a newcomer, your points are valid, and I'm curious to see how you'll feel once over the course of the next 6 episodes to see if they bring you around on what these characters are.
Someone who is ostensibly an outsider to this aspect of it. Yeah, I'm very interested.
Yeah, I do like the show as it is. I like the characters they introduced. Once again, I don't want Thrawn to be like Thanos, where we hear about him for all these time. Like when he finally shows up, he's like, "Yeah, I can command people to do things." I'm like, "Great, you're a bureaucrat in government."
He's going to show up with the Infinity Glove. Yeah. All right, well, let's wrap it up. Matt, awesome to have you on board. Where do people find you out there?
Yeah, thanks for having me back, folks. This was awesome. It's always awesome hanging out and talking all nerd stuff. You can find me over at Carpool Gaming. Each and every week we do the PlayStation Drive, usually at 1 p.m. Eastern on Mondays, where we go live. That show goes each and every week, talking all things PlayStation. Nice. And you can find me over on X at Matt_SilverSoul.
Very good. And Toddens?
Yes, on X, you can find me at Teoxtra, and trying to get more stuff up on Threads with SFU as well. So, it's an app in progress. They need to improve some things, but I'd like to do more over there as well.
I'm very happy for you to be the guinea pig. I am quasi-active on X, at the C3. Go ahead and spell it out. As previously mentioned, my lovely wife in April and I do run the USS Grand Petoskey. That is one of the biggest chapters of Starfleet, the international Star Trek fan club in the world. I also am very privileged to be the regional commissioner of Region 13, which is Michigan and Eastern Canada. Looking at you, Matt. If we win you over, you could be coming on board. If you're a Trekker within the sound of my voice in that area, please find us on socials, either at Region 13 or Grand Petoskey. Drop us a line, and we'd be happy to connect you with Trekkers near you. So that's it, friends. As always, thank you for joining us. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring, and to keep on trucking.
Be the hero, not the villain.
In a truck.
Use the Force and live long and prosper.
Nanu, nanu.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow at Secret Friends U on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.